Okay. So I hope you can hear me. One of the things I've noticed about this camera is that the sound quality, it's not great. I even went and I bought a mic. Like, look how cute. You're like, Donica, why aren't you using the mic? It'd be so nice to actually hear you properly right now. Because she doesn't work. I mean, it does. I tested it on a phone, and it works fine. It doesn't work with the actual camera that I bought it to work with. It's fine. I have one more plan to try to see if I can make it work. And if it still doesn't work, then I'm going to return it and buy a different type of mic that should work with said camcorder recording option. We'll see. We will see. That's my whole life is going, I don't know, we'll see. We'll find out. So, I wanted to come on and talk to you today about author signings. If you're wondering what the status of my braid is like, that's pretty good indicator. I wanted to come and talk to you about author signings. From an author perspective, but then also from like a reader perspective. So, from the reader perspective, here is my list of all of my author signings for this year. Yes, there's only 4. Yes, 2 of them are in Utah and 2 of them are in Idaho. I'm actually really excited. Well, I'm excited. I get excited for all of them. I'm particularly excited for Idaho Falls one, which is probably not there anymore. I'm particularly excited for the Idaho Falls one because we will have book 2 out at that particular event, and then all of the other ones. But that will be its little debut. It'll be its first author signing in Idaho Falls. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, "How do you even get author signings?" She's like, I'm not an author. I don't actually necessarily plan on doing that as of right this second. But out of curiosity, how do you even do that? How do you set that up? So I was kind of going to talk about it in 2 pieces. One is why do author signings? Why come as a reader? Excuse me. And then how, if you're a writer, how do I actually set that up? So as a reader, going to an author signing, number 1, sometimes it involves a lot of driving, which is also true if you happen to be the author. None of my author signings, the closest one I have to me is Idaho Falls, and that's a 45-minute drive. All the rest of them are 2+ hours away. It's really fun, actually, to get to meet an author that you love, to have them sign your book. Typically, I will also have bookmarks and stickers and other little freebie things. So it's really fun. I actually had the opportunity in November. I did an author signing in Farmington, at the Barnes & Noble in Farmington, and then I was like, oh, there's a Barnes & Noble in Layton. I should just stop by on my way home and see if I can just sign up for an author signing over there. And their store, you have to email in, send in your information, and then they get it all coordinated. There's not a person necessarily that you talk to. But they did say, I was kind of hoping for this particular weekend. They're like, oh, Richard Paul Evans has that weekend perpetually booked. It is the Saturday after Black Friday, which I'm like, duh, of course he does, because that's a fantastic day to do an author signing. Why wouldn't he have it booked? But he does have it booked for that day. And so I reached out and got the weekend before. And so I went and I signed a grand total of 11 books. I sold/signed 11 books in the 5 hours I was there. And then I drove back the next weekend to come meet him, because I was like, this guy wrote The Christmas Box, which if you've never read The Christmas Box, it is so good. It's not very long. It's like 80 pages. Like, it's not very long. Really, really sweet read. It's the kind of read my daughter was like, Mom, I want something to read. And I'm like, here. It was Christmas time. Here, read The Christmas Box. The next morning, she hands it back to me. Mom, that was so good. I'm like, you're done already? She's like, yeah. She also, like, eats books for breakfast. So there's that. But he's also self-published, which I didn't know prior to, like, meeting him. But it was really cool. I got to meet him. He told me about this program he's in, and I was able to join the program, and anyway, it's been super cool. So, as a fellow writer, sometimes it's also really fun to go to author signings and kind of see what the goal looks like, right? From, like, my author signing, which was, don't get me wrong, like, I'm not, like, it's apples and oranges in terms of where we are in our careers. But it is really cool to kind of get to see, like, a proper author versus, like, me do the author signing, where I stood there for 5 hours trying to get people to come talk to me, but not be weird about it, and be like, hi, do you want to buy my book? Sorry, that was really loud. Whereas he got there, like, his author signing started at 2. I got there at, like, 2:15, and there was already a line around the store for people to get their book signed by him. They had literally, I kid you not, a furniture dolly, like the kind, right, the dolly with the L shape with the wheels, filled with his latest Christmas book, Christmas in Bethel, which I started reading. I haven't actually finished it. Sorry, Richard, which you're probably not going to watch this anyway, but that's okay. I started reading it, and it's super good. But they have, like, stacks, literally stacks and stacks. And they're like, would you come in for the author signing? I'm like, actually, yes, I did. They're like, go buy your book and then get in line. You have to purchase your book before you get in line. And I was like, okay, good to know. Probably because they don't want people getting in line and then being like, oh, this line is too long, and just setting the book down and then having to go around the whole store and, like, collect all of these spare books. But anyway, it was super cool. I stood in line for like 2.5 hours. It was a long time. It was a long time of standing in line, which is one of the reasons why I started reading his book, which actually is about a girl. At least the very beginning, it starts off with a girl waiting in line to meet her favorite author inside her book. And I was like, Rich, you did this on purpose. Anyway. Actually, I think he goes by Rick. But I digress. It's super cool. So if you get a chance to go to an author signing and you see one of your favorite authors is going to be in town, I highly recommend you go. It is a time commitment depending on how well known the author is. If the author is really well known, like Richard Paul, my brain just like stopped. Richard Paul Evans or J.K. Rowling or Stephen King, right? Like these big names, then you're going to be standing in line for a while. If your favorite author happens to be somebody like, I don't know, D.C. Contour that no one's ever heard of, you won't have to wait in a line at all. You'll just get to walk right up to the table, like the lucky little goose that you are. So, from the author perspective, why do we do author signings? How frequently do I do them? And then how do I even do them? Why? Because it is a good way to make physical contact with people you wouldn't necessarily normally talk to and sell them a book in person. I have actually I feel like I've been pretty successful. Like I said, so my first one, I've done 3. I know, I'm speaking from so much experience. I've done 3. My first one I sold 25 books. Admittedly, it was my first author signing ever, and like I had family come, and like my aunt bought 6 copies. But I did sell like 7 to people that I had never met before. So like that's not bad. Like if I use that as a metric instead of the full 25 books, if I use like 7, and my first author signing, that's not too bad. And then at my next one, I did it in Farmington. And that one, I sold 14 copies. One was to my cousin. The other 13 were to people I had never met before. And then at the Layton signing, I sold 11. I also think my setup at the Layton one was like a little odd. I think I might try and bring my own. That might be one of my purchases this year, is buying my own folding table. That's neither here nor there. But still, not bad, right? Not bad. There's some people that don't sell any books at all. But I can only mentally, physically, financially handle about one author signing a quarter, which turns into four author signings a year. And I, thus far, have done all of them with Barnes & Noble. So how do you do it? Number one, you have to have your book published with Barnes & Noble. There's two ways to go about this. One is you can do publication with, like, if you're self-publishing, you publish through, like, Ingram Spark, get your book on Ingram Spark, and that will also go into Barnes & Noble. They use the same printer. I do not foresee myself using Ingram Spark in the future, because it's been a nightmare trying to work with them. I transferred my files over from Barnes & Noble, where I had originally published, to Ingram Spark, and then all of my files were wrong, but it cost $25 to go and fix the files that were fine when they were at Barnes & Noble, but for some reason got all jacked up when they went to Ingram Spark. I don't know what's wrong with the file. And then, anyway, and so I tried a whole bunch of different things. Their customer service is basically non-existent. You ask them a question, and like 6 to 8 business months later, you finally get an answer. It takes forever. Yeah, I won't be doing it again. So, I highly recommend, if you want to order my book, either reach out to me and I will send you a copy personally, or buy it from Amazon, because I know that those print nice and clean, and I can change whatever I need to. But that is an option. You can go through Ingram Spark, and it will get your book into Barnes & Noble. The other thing you can do, which is what I did and what I plan on doing for all future books, is purchase your own ISBNs, and then what you're going to do is you're going to publish your book through Amazon and Barnes & Noble, so that your book is at Barnes & Noble stores. You could also just do Barnes & Noble, like you don't have to do Amazon, but hear me out. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, so KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, Barnes & Noble Press. Those are going to be the two publishing print to order, direct order companies or whatever that you can use. There's a bunch more out there, but those are the main two that I use. And the reason you want to buy your own ISBNs, even though it is not cheap, is because then you can assign the same ISBN to one book, right? So whether you're getting my book on Amazon, whether you're getting my book on Barnes & Noble, the ISBN is exactly the same. So you have it, that way it's in their system, right? So if I take a copy of my book to Barnes & Noble and I say, hey, can you scan this for me? And they like dude it, then my book comes up, A Change of Tide, $15.99, right? Like, cool. So they can check out, they can process your books. It's already in the system. So you need it to be in the system. This is why I recommend buying your own ISBN and publishing through Amazon as well, is because it is cheaper, and personally I think it's a little bit easier to print your copies through Amazon. That's the thing about being an independent author, being a self-publishing author, being an author that nobody knows who you are when you're very first starting out in your career, is you have to bring your books. You have to pay the upfront print cost of your books. You bring them to the store, and then you have an agreement, right? Usually it's something like you get 60%, Barnes & Noble gets 40%, and that's of the cost, right? Of how much you get for the book, right? That's keeping in mind that you also paid for the book. So they're getting their 40% scot-free. Out of your 60%, right, is coming whatever percentage of total, right? So for example, so for easy math, let's say your book costs $20, right? But it costs you $5 to print the book, right? I said easy math. Okay, what is that? A quarter of the profit, or a quarter of the cost of the book. So if you make $40, you make $100. Let's say that. You make $100. You sell, what is that? 5 copies of the book. Oh, not too bad. Not too shabby, right? You sell 5 copies of your book. You make $100. And they say, you did so good. Here's your $60. We're going to take our $40. And you think, man, that's pretty good. Well, keep in mind that 25 of those dollars is going back into your pocket. That's recouping your initial cost. Does that make sense? So out of that $60, 35 is what you actually made, which still isn't that bad. But then they're walking away with their $40, so they actually did make more money than you. Do you see what I'm saying? And in that example, obviously they made $5 more, so it's not like a big thing. But the more that you make, the more that you sell. You can see why they're like, oh yeah, you can have 40%. It's fine. It works out to everybody's, and they pay you in cash at the end. At least they have for me every single time. So, how do you actually get it all set up? One of 2 ways. Well, one of 3 ways. You can either go in person and be like, hi, I'm a self-published author, and I was wondering if you guys do author signings. Like, is there a person I would talk to about that? And either they will say, yes, let me call him on my phone. Hello, hi, Gerald, could you come to the front desk? And then Gerald will come up and be like, hi. And then you tell him what you want, and then he says, yeah, let me pull out my calendar. And then you compare dates, and you figure out a date, and you put it in the books, and then you show up on that day like 30 minutes early so you have plenty of time to set up your table. Every single Barnes & Noble I've gone to so far, again, it's only been 3, has had some form of table for me. 2 of them had a folding like a card table, or not card table, like my brand's like 9 by 13. I'm like, that's a pan, but it's the long table, like the one that they bust out at church, right? When you have all the long tables because everybody's going to eat Christmas dinner or whatever, right? At the Christmas party. It's the long tables. And some of them have had, the first one had a tablecloth, and after that I was like, I should buy my own tablecloth. Like, it's not that much money. I can buy a tablecloth. So I invested, and now I have my own tablecloth, right? One of the Barnes, so 2 of them had the big long tables. One of them just like had the like little square tables that they used for display, and they just like cleared one off, and I kind of did my best. It was fine. So I was like, well, maybe I buy a long table, like one of those like folding kinds, so it's like this. And so I can bring that and just be like, oh, I've got my own table, and I can set that up. I do recommend, and they usually have some kind of chair, and so you can sit while you sign. But anyway, so that's one way to do it, is that you go and talk to the person in person. You can call and ask to talk to a person in person, or you can email. I recommend either calling or talking in person, even if it ends up with you getting an email. That way you know 100% that you're getting to the right person, if that makes sense. So far they've all been pretty easy. I will say I'm much of a I'm much more of a planner than they are, in the sense that I'm like, it's January 1st. Hi, I would like my author signing for November. And they're like, hey, girl, that's super cool. We're not planning that far ahead yet. Could you call us back in like May? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So that's a tentative plan. And so, hey, no. So that's how you get the author signing. Things that you bring, things that I bring at least. I bring stickers. I bring bookmarks. I have postcards. I don't think I'll do postcards again. They don't seem to be a big hit. People love stickers. Stickers are a big hit. Where do I get mine from? I will throw up the thing here where I get my stickers from, because I don't remember. But I can look it up and put it in there. And then, like I said, bookmarks, stickers. I also, at my last one, had a little bowl of candy. It's kind of worked, because the idea was that people would see candy, particularly younger kids would see the candy and be like, can I have some of that? And then, of course, that would, bonk the camera. That would involve mom or dad and or guardian coming over to be like, is that okay if I have a piece of candy? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And they'd be like, what are you doing here? I'd be like, well, actually, I read a book. And then we'd do the whole thing, right? And that actually did work a couple of times. And it was cute, because the kid came up and he goes, what's this bag of candy for? Actually, it was a bowl. What's this bowl of candy for? I said, well, actually, the point of the bowl of candy is that you walk up and you want to know if you can have a piece of candy, and then your parents have to walk up and they ask me if you can have a piece of candy, and I say yes, which of course you can, as long as it's okay with mom and dad. And then mom and dad are like, well, what are you doing here? And I literally said it like that, and they just laughed and thought it was super funny, and they were like, well, so what's your book about? And then I told them what the book's about, and then the dad was like, well, my daughter loves that kind of book, and she's like, I kind of want a copy of that book. And then I sold the book. So it worked. And I'm on a budget, and so I did not get like uber fancy candy. I got like parade candy, but also like some candy that I don't mind snacking on, because you're going to be there for a while. One of the other top tips I have for authors, and I have seen one other author that's not true. I've seen other authors do author signings at Barnes & Noble just walking around, right? And almost all of them are doing one of two things. Either they're just sitting there, kind of like nervously glancing around, or, and I consider this one like a cardinal sin. I get it if like you've got to text somebody real quick, but the other one I'll see is they're just sitting there like this the whole time. And I'm like, are you here for an author signing or not, girl? Because if you want to sell books, you got to like look like you want to be there. So one of the things I do is I don't sit down unless I'm signing a book. So when I'm actually signing a book, I will sit down in the chair, sign the book, put the stickers and all the things in, hand them the book, and be like, thank you so much, that was amazing. But otherwise, I'm standing. I either stand behind depending on kind of the space, I either stand right behind the table, or I'll stand like off to the side, or I don't really stand in front of it usually. And then you have kind of books everywhere so people can see them. And so far, like I said, I've done 3, but if you add up the total of all 3 that I've done, I have sold 50 books in person. Admittedly, 6 of them were to my aunt. At my first author signing, that was by far my best one, because I had a lot of family that showed up, and it was amazing, and I was very, very blessed to have people show up, and I'm so thankful. So I don't want to, like, negate that, but I also realize that, like, not all of my author signings are going to be 25 copies being sold. But at the same time, when you add all 3 together, 50 books is still pretty good. It's still pretty good. So I'm enjoying it so far, and I hope to see you at one of my author signings if you can get a chance to get into my neck of the woods. And if you have more questions, I would love to answer them in a timely-ish manner. But that's all for today. So see you next week.